Hey guys, welcome back to another installment of these powers that be. Now today we're going to be touching more on BlackRock, Larry Fink's brainchild, and his connection to the main push for this post-utopian, technocratic, tracked and traced, cashless society, along with the BIS, the Bank for International Settlement, and the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and how this all connects back to Russia, and how Jeffrey Sachs' shock therapy policies crashed Russia in the late 80s, early 90s, which led to the rise of Putin using the same economic tyranny there as they're doing here currently in America. So Larry Fink is saying that Russia-Ukraine crisis could accelerate digital currencies. He's saying that countries are going to have to reassess their currency dependencies, and that BlackRock's studying digital currencies and stablecoins due to increased client interest. He's saying that this digital payment system, thoughtfully designed, could enhance settlement of international transactions. Okay, now this is important because anytime that there's war, anytime that there's conflict, there's always geopolitical relationships that always end up getting compromised in the market. And this leads to a lot of, gaps in the supply chain. That they're saying that, well, no more having to worry about the market to let the market decide, no more having to worry about geopolitical relationships if you have Bitcoin. And as they'd say, never let a good crisis go to waste, and that's exactly what they're trying to do here. So moving on, let's look a little bit more at Larry Fink, him just coming out a couple months ago saying that globalization needs a digital payment system. And of course, Larry Fink was completely against crypto this time last year, saying that it might have just been a good trading tool. But now he's coming out away from playing opposition and saying maybe it is a good idea. I like this because it kind of goes into what Larry Fink was saying right here to his letter to the CEOs a couple months ago. All of the CEOs, which BlackRock is a top shareholder, and there is many. He sent this letter out to all those CEOs, which of course BlackRock is top shareholder in, and Vanguard in across the board, everything. MasterCard, Discover Card, Wells Fargo, Amazon, all of them. So it's all the same shareholders. It's a very small group of people. And letter to the CEOs, he says, finally, a less discussed aspect of the war is potential impact on accelerating digital currencies. The war will prompt countries to reevaluate their currency dependencies. Even before the war, several governments were looking to play a more active role in digital currencies and defining the regulatory frameworks under which they operate. Now, a lot of people like to say that decentralized crypto can't be tracked, it can't be regulated. This isn't true. So he goes on to say a global digital payment system, thoughtfully designed, could enhance settlement of international transactions. And he also uses an example as to why this is so good is because it'll help cross-border payments. For example, when a migrant worker sends earning back to their families, so we see increasing interest from our clients on studying stablecoins. So basically saying they don't want any more borders. They don't want anything to affect globalization. They don't want anything coming in the way of what they're trying to accomplish here. So let's look into the BIS. So the Bank for International Settlements. These guys here are owned by the central banks, and it's kind of a misnomer because when we say central banks, we mean they're beholden to all these same financial groups, namely BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street having the top AUC assets under custody, Vanguard and BlackRock being the top. AUM, assets under management, quite many, a dozen trillion dollars, most in the world. So these same people, these same executives are landed in all of these think tanks, like the BIS, like the IMF, like the Trilateral Commission, that all govern foreign affairs, whether it be economic or otherwise. So the Bank for International Settlements, they foster international monetary and financial cooperation and serves as a bank for central banks. And of course, they're centered out of Switzerland, the exact same place where the World Economic Forum, coincidentally enough, is centered out of, as well as these other think tanks. So moving on. So now the Basel Accords is their bureaucratic arm of the BIS. Now the Basel Accords is the supervision accords. It's recommendations on banking regulations. So this is results of deliberations by central bankers. There's Basel 1, 2, and 3. And each one, it kind of hones in on the other one. Basel Capital Accord, the New Capital Framework, and Basel 3, which is, I believe, is going to pertain to more of this cryptocurrency responding to the financial crisis, if they don't just add a Basel 4 onto it. So, moving on. This is the BIS working with the IMF back in 2018, more closely, to help strengthen financial supervisory skills around the world. And, namely, the IMF and the BIS effort to promote financial stability and support durable and inclusive economic growth, and are much more than just crisis prevention. Once again, going back to this crisis. Now I'm going to link something in the description about the IMF. Now the IMF and Jeffrey Sachs's shock treatment policies in the late 80s, early 90s led to the fall of Russia, economically speaking, and which led to all the oligarchs thwarting, completely extorting Russia for all of its natural resources, which led to the rise of Putin. This is the IMF, which is primarily run by the United Nations. It was founded by the United Nations and is still head by it. So in these same shock treatment policies that were happening there are happening here currently in the United States. The only difference is that in Russia, they went to this bartering system when everything got hyperinflated, when the supply chain broke down, things weren't available, people went to bartering. They don't want people going to bartering. They want to crash the dollar. They want to replace the dollar with a more sustainable currency, something that can be more liquid across all platforms, a platform that BlackRock is currently trying to manufacture. Here we go with the BIS, developing digital cryptocurrencies platform prototype in league with BlackRock. They're both working on this platform. This just came out a couple months ago, right around the exact same time, same news, as BlackRock working on this prototype. BIS also saying they're working on this prototype, linking them both together. Larry Fink and the BIS and their push for this technocratic, cashless, post-utopian, tracked and traced society. Saying that several central banks and the Bank for International Settlements have developed prototypes for a common digital currency platform that has the potential to make cross-border payments more efficient. 2 prototypes demonstrate the technical viability of such a platform. So which 2 prototypes are they talking about here? Are they talking about BlackRock's prototype and the BIS prototype? Codenamed Project Dunbar. So if you don't know, this isn't the first time that BlackRock has come up with algorithms. They've already come up with an auto trading algorithm called Aladdin that has every single trader on Wall Street using its data in order to make trades. You can currently buy into the Aladdin software if you like. It's what's made BlackRock the $11 trillion company that it is today, compartmentalized through Vanguard and their custody assets through State Street. So now they're working on a platform with BIS, is what I'm gathering, called Project Dunbar. Platform is the most efficient model for payments connectivity, but it's also the most challenging to achieve. They want to have a central hub. Globally, central banks are trying to come to terms with emerging payment technologies, pioneered by tech firms including China's Ant Group Co. Additionally, Facebook Inc.'s DM project, formerly known as Libra, is building out a global payment network that could serve as its own stablecoin or central bank digital currencies. Facebook's in on it, China's in on it, which of course, you know that the top shareholder of Facebook is Vanguard, subsidiary of BlackRock. So whenever they say all these people are working on it, it's basically different factions of the same. So yeah, now I included this because this is just tying it into this whole carbon-free, gasless, cashless society, tracked and trace, showing how digital currencies are more energy efficient than traditional currencies. It all feeds into the same thing, this whole Green New Deal, all of it. As soon as you're gasless, we already see the rolling blackouts in California. They can just turn the power off at will if everybody's on the grid, nobody's charging their cars. The world isn't even set up for any of this. Even if everybody was going to go electric tomorrow, we would be beholden to all of the precious metal mines of China and all of the base mineral reserves, which are all foreign. So this, like I said, just goes on to it saying that while crypto assets like Bitcoin are wasteful in terms of resources, other designs could be more energy efficient than existent payment methods and systems, also known as cash and sovereign monetary systems. And I know some people would argue with me and say, well, no money is sovereign, it's all fiat, but I would disagree. So now this is a book that I will link in the description. It's IMF's policy paper that they just came out with last year, and it's got a lot of stuff on it. This is just 8 pages, but it goes into, it's a staff report. It goes into different crypto options, the surveillance, guidelines, internal organization and processes, talking about some of the technology, encryption, the analytics, the big data sets. Some of the digital money that they bring up are e-money, stable coins, tokenized bank deposits, tokenized financial assets that can be seamlessly traded on liquid markets, sort of like iMoney, which I'm guessing you can just turn any asset into electronic money. All forms of digital money have some basic features in common, is what they're saying. It goes on and on about this. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I'll link this in the description. It's called The Rise of Public and Private Digital Money by the IMF, the same people in charge of the Sachs shock therapy policies that led to the financial collapse of Russia in the late 80s, early 90s, are the same people. The United Nations, in league with BlackRock, creating this new platform of digital currency to move forward into this post-utopian, cashless, tracked and traced society.